Long before modern political Zionism was formally organized by Theodor Herzl in 1897, the foundational geopolitical ideas for a Jewish state in Palestine were heavily shaped by 19th century Protestant evangelical theology in Great Britain and the United States. This movement, often referred to by historians as Restorationism or early Christian Zionism, fused specific biblical interpretations with the imperial interests of Western powers, creating a powerful political momentum that ultimately culminated in policies like the Balfour Declaration of 1917. 1. Theological roots, premillennial dispensationalism. During the late 18th and early 19th centuries, evangelical revival swept through Britain and North America. A specific framework, a biblical interpretation called premillennial dispensationalism, popularized by theologians like John Nelson Darby, gained widespread traction among Anglicans, Baptists, and Presbyterians. This theological view hinged on several core principles. Literal fulfillment of prophecy. Evangelicals argued that biblical prophecies regarding the gathering of Israel were not symbolic or spiritualized allegories for the Christian church, but literal promises meant to happen on physical land in the Middle East. Prerequisite for the second coming. According to this eschatology, end times theology, Jesus Christ would not return to earth until the Jewish people returned to their ancestral homeland in Palestine, rebuilt Jerusalem, and reestablished a sovereign presence. Divine blessing and cursing, citing Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. Evangelical leaders argued that nations, specifically Britain and America, would prosper or suffer based on how they treated the Jewish people and supported their return to the Holy Land. 19th century evangelical eyes, the end times timeline, Jewish restoration to rebuilding of Jerusalem, Jewish restoration to rebuilding of Jerusalem's second coming of Christ, Palestine, land, and spiritual renewal and millennial kingdom too. British restorationism and imperial strategy. In 19th century Britain, evangelical theology penetrated the highest corridors of political power. The most influential figure in translating theology into geopolitical action was Anthony Ashley Cooper, the 7th Earl of Shaftesbury, Lord Shaftesbury. Lord Shaftesbury and the British Foreign Office, Lord Shaftesbury was an ardent evangelical and a close relative of British Foreign Secretary and later Prime Minister Lord Palmerston. Shaftesbury used his political influence to urge the British government to sponsor Jewish settlement in Palestine. The imperial argument. Shaftesbury cleverly combined religious zeal with British imperial strategy. As the Ottoman Empire began to decay, the sick man of Europe, European powers scrambled for influence in the Middle East to secure trade routes to India, including the Suez Canal region. Shaftesbury argued that establishing a Jewish agricultural population in Palestine under British protection would secure a loyal Western-aligned buffer zone in the region. The 1838 consulate. Due to Shaftesbury's lobbying, Britain established the first European consulate in Jerusalem in 1838, explicitly taking on the role of protector of local Jewish populations in Palestine. Popularizing the slogan decades before it was adopted by secular Zionists, Shaftesbury popularized the phrase advocating for a country without a nation, for a nation without a country. 3. American evangelical support. The Blackstone Memorial, 1891. Across the Atlantic, American Protestant evangelicals were developing identical ideas. The most famous manifestation of early American Christian Zionism was led by William Eugene Blackstone, an evangelical preacher and businessman. The Blackstone Memorial, 1891. In response to horrific state-sanctioned anti-Semitic massacres, pogroms in the Russian Empire, Blackstone organized a massive petition in 1891 calling on U.S. President Benjamin Harrison and Secretary of State James G. Blaine to use American diplomatic influence to give Palestine to the Jewish people. Prominent signatories. The petition was signed by over 400 prominent Americans, including the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Mayor of New York, major congressmen, and titans of industry like John D. Rockefeller, William McKinley, later president, and J.P. Morgan. Argument for self-determination. Blackstone argued that the European powers had recently granted independence to Greece, Bulgaria, and Serbia from Ottoman rule, so fairness demanded that the Jewish people be given the same right to self-determination in Palestine. 4. The bridge to political policy, the Balfour Declaration, 1917. The 19th century Evangelical Foundation laid the groundwork for the historic Balfour Declaration of 1917, in which Britain officially announced its support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The key architects of the Balfour Declaration were deeply steeped in 19th century evangelical culture. Prime Minister David Lloyd George. Raised in a strict Calvinist Baptist household, Lloyd George explicitly noted in his memoirs that he was taught more about the geography of ancient Palestine, cities like Hebron, Jerusalem, and Shiloh, than about the geography of his native Britain. Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour, a devout Presbyterian who viewed the restoration of Jewish people to Palestine as a historic moral debt owed by Western civilization to repair centuries of Christian persecution and fulfill biblical destiny. Summary, matrix, sphere, key figures, core driving motivation, lasting political impact, Basharbit Coe, British evangelicalism, Lord Shaftesbury, Lord Palmerston, biblical end times prophecy mixed with British imperial control of trade routes. Established the 1838 Jerusalem Consulate, laid the cultural framework for the 19th century British mandate mentality. American evangelicalism, William E. Blackstone, Dwight L. Moody, humanitarian response to Russian pogroms driven by premillennial dispensationalism. Produced the Blackstone Memorial, 1891, demonstrating high-level U.S. corporate and political consensus decades before 1948. British Statecraft, 1917. David Lloyd George, Arthur Balfour. Childhood evangelical Bible upbringing combined with WWI strategy in the Middle East. Issued the Balfour Declaration, 1917, giving former Western superpower backing to the Zionist movement. The historical takeaway. Before political Zionism gained momentum among European Jewish leaders in the late 1890s, the political, legal, and conceptual frameworks for a Jewish state in Palestine were actively built and promoted by 19th century Western Protestant evangelicals who viewed the movement through a dual lens of biblical prophecy and imperial statecraft.